Hello and welcome to the Stiles Council, the England podcast that is your one-stop shop for all things football #banter. This week, this is a little solo pod, a little insert pod if you like, where I'm just going to talk through the latest England squad. We've got a couple of pods coming up as England play over the next few days. And me and Chris will be doing them together, and there is lots of big England news to cover, Southgate's new contract, John Terry retiring, etc. But we're going to do that together. This is literally just going to be me just running you through a few thoughts on the squad, which is basically just a way of me talking about Lewis Dunk for 15 minutes. So, starting with the goalkeepers, no real surprises. Apart from, as if you listen to the last pod, I was actually quite surprised that he didn't call Joe Hart back into this squad. Bettinelli from Fulham, I think, is a goalkeeper that I've seen a little bit of, and I don't think is exceptional. But I may be wrong. Fulham fans may be screaming at me in their earphones. Jack Butland, I've seen a couple of times this season live myself. And Jack Butland is Jack Butland. He's a very good keeper. His distribution is not brilliant, prone to the odd ricket, but we know all about Jack Butland. Alex McCarthy has now found himself in a couple of squads and seems to be getting better. I've only seen him a handful of times, but he looks a perfectly competent goalkeeper. But number one really is Jordan Pickford, and there's no taking that shirt off him. And I think England are all the better for it. The tempo he sets and what he gives you with his distribution, there's absolutely no danger of him coming under pressure anytime soon. Slight disappointment that we've picked 4 goalkeepers when we could have perhaps utilised that spot somewhere else. But I can sort of understand having a look, because past Pickford, I think Butland is natural number 2. You could argue, do we need a number 3? I don't know. It's a funny position in an international squad, isn't it? Third choice goalkeeper. But yeah, let's have a look at them. So, defenders, Trent Alexander-Arnold, who I don't think anybody could argue, and I think it's good to see him in the squad again. Joe Gomez, which is very good to see in the squad. He's had a really stellar start to the season. We're recording this the Monday after the Man City versus Liverpool game, where he was shunted out to fullback, and he did an okay job. He's very versatile, and I think he's going to be in England squads for a long time to come. Slabhead, Harry Maguire, well, of course. Danny Rose, who I think has been in brilliant form, has really started to crank through the gears again, and England will be all the better for it, hopefully. Luke Shaw initially called up and has had to drop out. Ben Chilwell's come in. Chilwell is another player I really like, young player, and I have absolutely no problem with him being in there. John Stones, emergency defensive midfielder if required. He is hoping not. But again, very good defender. We know all about John Stones. There's not an awful lot to say. Kieran Trippier, Superman, as we're starting to call him in an England shirt. Carl Walker, who on Sunday in that game against Liverpool, him and Benjamin Mendy on the other side gave a really different type of performance, a very sort of disciplined performance, and it was good to see. And I think if he is going to play on in that back three, that discipline is quite refreshing and quite positive to see. But obviously we also picked Tarkowski. Tarkowski's had to drop out, and in comes Lewis Dunk, who is the Albion's best defender. To tell you a little bit about Lewis Dunk, he is a extremely good defender. He's good on the ball. He's very quick in the challenge. He's 25 years old, and he's still quite raw. He's had one season in the Premier League, and he did very, very well last year. Albion are my club, so I'm prone to deep affection for him, shall we say. But we're all aware he has some rough edges, and the thing is, his partnership with Dunkers and Duffy at the back, is really, really good. Can he just transfer that to fitting into a different system with players he's never played with at the side of him? Probably not straight away. And I don't think you'll see him, maybe for a cameo off the bench, as a reward for being called up. But I can't see him, shifting Maguire, shifting Stones, shifting Walker out of that back three. I think if one of them goes, Joe Gomez takes the position anyway. But it's good that he's in there, because he's a player who has come on an awful lot in his last season in the Championship and in his first season in the Premier League. And I think it is just reward. I think, I'm saying this as a Brighton and Hove Albion fan, but I think if you look at Duncan, you look at Tarkowski, I wouldn't say there's much difference between them. I think it's good reward, and I'm very pleased that he's in there. Midfielders, Ross Barkley, who is coming off his best game in a Chelsea shirt and his best game for anyone in probably about 2 years at the weekend. I'm very, very pleased to see him in there. I'm a huge Ross Barkley fan, and then he just tumbled off a cliff a couple of years ago. I saw him in his first game this season at Huddersfield. I was covering the game, and it was quite clear how he was adapting his game so he didn't give the ball away as much. And Sarri was barking at him from the sideline every time he did give it away. What was noticeable, I think, in the game against Southampton is just how well he used that ball. Everton fans used to tear their hair out, as he was sort of capable of these absolutely brilliant things, and also capable of completely fluffing up a 12-yard side foot pass and putting it out for a throw-in. So I'm very pleased he's back on an upward curve, and I think if he continues on that upward curve, there is a place not only in this squad, in the England first 11 for him. Nathan Chalobah, who is, I think, in there on merit again. Friend of the podcast, Daniel Story, is a huge Chalobah fan and thinks he could well be an answer for England longer term. Eric Dyer, who me and Chris have both sort of... There isn't an alternative to Eric Dyer at the moment, but we're also not completely sure what Eric Dyer does at the moment. He's in there for his versatility, but he looks like a player at the moment who's caught a bit between two stools. His confidence isn't quite there, and his club form's not quite where it was. But there is no alternative. So Andy scored that penalty in the summer, so he can stay in that squad forever. John Henderson, Mr. Average. He is our sort of metronome in midfield. He will give a 7 out of 10 performance in both these upcoming games. As I've said before, I think the thing with Henderson is he doesn't do anything particularly outstanding, but he also doesn't do anything wrong. He just ticks away in that midfield, and let's be honest, he's in that England midfield for a long time to come yet. Harry Winks and Mason Mount are the two perhaps most interesting ones in midfield. Harry Winks, again, I've been fortunate enough to see him live once this season. He's a lot more dynamic than Henderson, but he's also got a few rough edges. He can be wound up quite easily, and it shows in it then shows in the next 5 minutes of his game. And if he's going to have an international career longer term, he's going to have to be careful of that. But he has his good range of passing. He's very quick. I was surprised when I saw him live at his speed. So yeah, I think definitely worth looking at. But Mason Mount is the name that I know a few people are probably quite happy to see him there, but don't know an awful lot about him. Chelsea player, one of the myriad of Chelsea players who are out on loan. He's at with Frank Lampard at Derby. I've seen a lot of Mason Mount at England youth levels, and I've watched him live once as well. I am, as Chris and various other people tell you, I am a bit of a tub thumping Mason Mount fan. He has something different. He has he's a creative midfielder. I really hate the comparison thing, and it's way too easy with where he's gone. But he is very similar to Frank Lampard in that his first thought is a forward pass. He absolutely loves a goal. He's got the Lampard Scholes late run into the box thing down to a T. And I think if anybody wants an idea of what he's like, if you go onto YouTube, and I know YouTube compilations can make anyone look good, but have a look at some of the compilations of his time in Holland, because what you see there is a player who scores all different types of goals, whose assists are... He plays all different types of passes. You know, he's capable of crossing a ball. He's capable of threading a ball. He's capable of picking somebody out from 30, 40 yards away. I am really hopeful about Mason Mount longer term. He's in that difficult situation where he's got to go back and get into his club side at Chelsea. But he's not a player who strikes me who is going to be happy not playing football. So he will be the Chelsea situation. I have a feeling will be resolved in the summer one way or another, because particularly now he's in England squads, he doesn't want to be sitting on a bench. So will he get onto the pitch here? I honestly don't know, but I'm big time hopeful on Mason Mount, and I would urge you to check him out. Basically, forwards. I don't know quite why the BBC have got James Maddison in there. I suppose he is a creative midfielder and a forward-thinking midfielder, but I wouldn't have him alongside the strikers, but never mind. But James Maddison, completely there on merit. Me and Chris talked about it in other podcasts, big fans. And again, a huge reason for hope longer term when you look at his age. Harry Kane, of course, is in there. He's starting to recover some form. He's playing a slightly different position for Spurs this season, slightly more withdrawn, having to play with other people rather than doing it all himself, and he does seem to be getting used to it. Marcus Rashford, you all know my feelings on Marcus Rashford. I'm a huge fan. I'm glad he's in there. Raheem Sterling, very, very happy to see him in there again. Really big fan of what Sterling brings to the attack, really, and the space he opens up for others. Danny Welbeck, of course, Danny Welbeck. But then the sort of big one that it's worth expanding on is of course Jaden Sanchez. We've been banging on this podcast about Jaden Sanchez. I think he probably even got a mention in the very first episode. He is a wonderful player and a wonderful prospect. He is... We need to be careful because he has had a wonderful start to the season. I think he's certainly got more assists than anybody else in Europe, I know, and it's by quite a way. I think he's on 7 or 8 assists, and I think the closest is like Griezmann on 4 or something like that. And he's already, I think he scored 2 as well for Borussia Dortmund. He is a wonderful, wonderful prospect. He has got... he is far more direct than, say, a Sterling or a Rashford if you play him wide of a 3. He is far more traditional in the sense that he is perfectly happy to go on the outside of a man and whip a cross in. He's not continually looking to cut inside all the time. He has got a wonderful touch. He has got a really, really good football brain. If you're on Twitter, I know apparently there are a few out there who aren't, but if you're on Twitter, if you go onto BT Sports, Twitter account. They tweeted the other day, quite recent, so you'll be able to find it. But it was basically, I think, 5 or 6 of his assists this season for Dortmund, and you'll see the sort of variety. There's a couple of balls from midfield that he plays. There's a couple of little threaded balls where he just nips it through to a striker. There's a couple of really good crosses. There's one I really like where he goes on the outside and puts a really good deep cross in for a volley. So I'm very excited to see him in there, but also trying to temper my expectations because he is a young player. He's made a magnificent start to the season. He's now starting for Dortmund. He got the bulk of his assists at the start of this season by coming off the bench, which is incredible when you look at the amount he recorded. But we have to be careful because we've had these talents before, and I think I'm at the point with Sancho where I think I just want to wrap him up in cotton wool at the start and not have people expecting him to come on and completely turn games and what have you. I think we're all pretty certain it'll be Rashford one side, Sterling the other, and Kane through the middle. I have a feeling Sancho's going to get some minutes off the bench, and I have a feeling at least one of the times he does it, he's going to get people purring because he's got that ability to shift the play, to take a man on, that turn of speed that gets the crowd off their seat. So we will see, but it's a very positive thing to see him in there, and me and Chris can't pretend to not be absolutely delighted he's there. So that's the squad in total. And I think, I'm speaking for Chris when I say this, but I think we're both pretty delighted with it, really. Gareth, again, has shown himself willing to make changes, willing to bring people in. And this next generation of England players that we keep banging on about, we do need to get them into the senior squad, and we do need to find ways to start integrating them to see, Saliba in there, to see Mount in there, to see Sancho in there, to see Gomez in there, to see Alexander coming in again, to see Lewis Dunk being brought in. Really, really positive at the moment. Really, really positive. So, I think regardless of the results in the next couple of games, I think as England fans we have to, again, I know it's frustrating, but we have to sort of say, well, we're on a journey. We've got 2 very tough games coming up for different reasons, and I think the manner of performance is probably more going to be more interesting than the result. So it's a very positive squad. Let's hope that carries forward. And yeah, all good. So, solo pod over. As an experience from doing it this side, talking to myself in an empty room, it was absolutely dreadful. But we've got through it. We've achieved, me and you, listener. We will be back very, very shortly because we'll be reviewing the upcoming games. We've got a little spell coming up where there's lots of England stuff to talk about. We've also got some of my favourite England game pods coming up as well. So yeah, keep it Stiles Council. My name's David Hartrick. Thank you all for listening this long. I promise you next one there will be another voice on the pod. See you then.